12, naturally we call it Yud Bet, here in Masechet Menachot, making fantastic progress. So many interesting insights in a Talmud which is packed with so much various different halachot, different laws, and so on and so forth. And how important it is that we actually explore all of this in of itself over here. It's very interesting over here in today's page. So what's going on, friends? So today we're learning about a topic about improper thoughts while preparing a meal offering. It's okay. Yeah. So what's going on, friends? We know that we learned previously regarding animal sacrifices, korbanot, in Masechet Zvachim. I recommend everyone to research what we actually learned over there. This was, I believe, back in page 13 bet over there. The inappropriate thoughts that take place at, let's say, specific critical moments in of itself during the preparation of a korban, of a sacrifice, will cause that sacrifice over there to become invalid. Obviously, improper thoughts about where the sacrifice might be eaten or sacrifice will cause it to be considered, a terminology we've used before, leftover. Leftover is notar, which will invalidate this korban over here. As we've spoken about that extensively in the previous stuff within regards to that. So now, I think improper thoughts about the time that the sacrifice was to be eaten or sacrificed will cause it to be called pigul. What is pigul? That means abhorrent. Now, such a sacrifice will be invalid over here, will be puzzle. Eating such a korban also entails the punishment of karet. This is execution, which is obviously naturally a heavenly, God forbid, death penalty someone receive over there. So now it's actually interesting over here. We are talking about the Mishnah on today's page teaches that these laws apply to meal offerings as well. The source for this law is the parallel that exists between the rules of animal sacrifices and meal offerings. Now, according to the great commentator Rashi, he bases this on the Torah's placement of all sacrifices in a single passage in the book of Vayikra. I think it's in chapter number 7, verse number 37. So which are these specific, let's say, key time periods, moments, that are the times when the thoughts of, let's say, notar or pigul, which invalidates, will affect the validity of the meal offerings? When will that be over here? So it's interesting. The sacrificial service that we find for the mincha is similar to that of an animal sacrifice. After preparing the meal offering, the priest, the Kohen, he's going to take something called a kometz, which we've spoken about before, which means a fistful from the mixture. He's going to place it in one of the Bet HaMikdash's vessels, the temple vessels, to sanctify it. He's going to carry it to the altar and burn it on the altar. From that time, the remnants are allowed to the Kohanim to eat. Thus, the four main activities of the mincha will parallel those to the animal sacrifice of it. So what are those four, let's say, mirrors in of itself? First of all, the kmitza. Now, we've spoken about this before. What is kmitza? How does this parallel? This parallels to taking the fistful of flour, will parallel to shechita. Shechita is slaughtering the animal. And I think we spoke about this in the introduction, which we did in a previous video over here. Then the second one is placing the komets in the Bet HaMikdash vessel. That is going to parallel collecting the blood in a temple vessel. The third one is carrying the komets to the altar, which will parallel carrying the blood to the altar. And finally over here, friends, burning the komets on the altar parallel sprinkling the blood to the altar. So it's at all these times that an inappropriate thought will invalidate the offering. Anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community, and please subscribe to the channel. We've got so much fantastic content over here, so please don't forget to subscribe to the channel over here. I heard other actually interesting insights within regards to these pages of the Gemara. There was a very, very beautiful insight actually in yesterday's page of the Gemara, which I just wanted to share over here. I just wanted to share it over because I think it's very much on topic over here. There was a question yesterday we dealt with regards to a kmitza, whether it's a complete handful or a smaller fistful. We were talking about that. And just to brush up what we actually learned yesterday, there's Abaya asked Rava, the great rabbis they were, Okay, so Abaya would ask Rava, how is the kmitza done? Rava would reply, it is done in the same manner as when people take a handful of something, which obviously implies taking with it all the fingers, Rashi. An essential part of the Bet HaMikdash service, what a mincha offering, usually translated obviously as a meal offering, since the main component was fine flour, is for a Kohen, a priest, to perform an act called kmitza before bringing it to the altar in the Bet HaMikdash. That's what we've learned about. Other components, let us say, of this mincha offering are oil and levana. These are known as oil and frankincense. Levana is. There are 4 different types of menachot that are specified in the Torah. Now, it's actually interesting. I'm using this from Rabbi Moshe Newman. He gives a brilliant insight within regards to the page of Daf Yomi. He says, did you know that each of our fingers has a distinct name? And Abaya asks a question on Rava's definition from the Braita that speaks about the names of the 5 fingers of each hand and the significance of each finger. So he's going to start it, Rabbi Moshe Newman, and point out the pinky is called a zeret. Why is it called a zeret? Because it indicates the length for the choshen. Next, there's the kmitza finger, which is used for taking the kmitza portion from the mincha offering. Next, we see is something called an amah. That amah, obviously, we know is the longest finger, which served as means, a standard means of measures in the Bet HaMikdash. Next is the etzba, which the Kohen dips in blood when required. And finally, the last one is the bohen, which is the thumb, as the thumb plays a role in the purification process of a metzorah, as we know about. Now, Abaya is going to question over here. He questions that is that if the kmitza finger is used for taking kmitza portion and not the zeret finger at the end of the hand, this is going to indicate that the kmitza portion of the mincha was not taken with all of the fingers as Rava had averred. Now, obviously, to say in parentheses here, it would all seem that according to Rava, the kmitza offering should be called a zeret offering over here. That's what it would seem like over here. Now, Rav Moshe Newman, it's a really, really excellent note over here, excellent article over here on the page of Gemara, which really captures it over here. Abayi's question, let's just say over here, is that if the kmitza finger is used for taking the kmitza portion and not the zeret finger at the end of the hand, this will indicate that the kmitza portion of the mincha was not taken with all of the fingers as Rava had averred. Over here, obviously, it would seem that according to Rava, the kmitza offering should be called a zeret offering over here. Now, the Gemara is going to present an answer for Rava to, let's say, even it out. Meaning that when Rava said that all the entire hand was used, i.e. all 5 fingers, this was in the case the amount taken was protruding on the sides beyond the middle 3 fingers. In this case, the great Rava is saying that the zeret served to wipe away the excess from the kmitza finger on the bottom hand, and obviously likewise, actually added in parenthesis, the bohen wiped off the extra, let's say, that protruded from the etzba finger on the top. And this explanation actually answers Abaya's question, and it would seem Abaya and Rava both agree that a kmitza portion of the mincha was only within the 3 middle finger of the fistful, and not a handful within all 5 fingers of the hand. Let's just say this specific agreed upon manner of doing kmitza, Rav Moshe Newman is going to add also let's say jibes with the specific quotation in this specific topic we're learning about, the sugya. This act of kmitza is one of the most difficult acts of the service in the Bet HaMikdash. It wasn't just like merely taking a handful, but it involved employing careful dexterity to ensure that the amount was within the middle 3 fingers in the fist and did not protrude at all, and all done with one hand. Now, obviously, they actually conclude over here, like, let's just say over here with an understanding of how to perform the kmitza for mincha, obviously the consistent with the commentary of Rashi in the Chumash, actually, we should very much learn about in Parshat Vayikra, in chapter 2, verse number 2, which explains the phrase melo kumtsu. What does this mean? How does a Kohen take out exactly a fistful and not more or less over here? He covers, let's say, the palm of his hand with his 3 fingers and uses his little finger from below and his thumb from above to remove and level out any overflow from the mincha This result obviously is an act, let's say, of an extra measure of the Kmitza, but they actually recommend over here that we look at the Torat Kohanim over there, which will expound on that further. So very, very interesting over here. So yeah, just within regards to this, they also quote a pasuk over here, which we learn about here in today's page in the Gemara from Parshat Tzav, I think from chapter 6, verse number 8 in the book of Vayikra. There's actually a verse that says, "And all the Levana incense which is on the mincha, and place it onto the altar to be burnt." So obviously we know that this is that when a mincha offering or a mincha flour offering was brought in the Bet HaMikdash, the Torah commanded the Kohen performing the service to take a 3-finger full comets mixed with the oil over here. And there's 2 issues I just wanted to share over, which are raised, let's say, by the need to include Levana in this offering. Why do we need to include frankincense in this offering over here? That's a question that's posed. First of all, let's say, there is the practical problem of properly performing the act of Kmitza, removal of the comets, while there is Levana incense on top of the flour batch. And we learned about, actually in Daf number 6, if we cast our minds back in Amud Aleph, that they stated that even if a grain of the Levana was gathered up the flour in the comets, will be disqualified because it's not absolutely a full measure. So a question is also posed over here. If so, how was it possible to make Kmitza and avoid Levana, this frankincense, in getting in the way? So Rav Mendel Weinbach will say that Rashi is going to solve this problem, I think, as we learn about in page number 11, and by pointing out that the Levana was all pushed to one side of the vessel containing the flour, so that an unobstructed Kmitza could be performed in the middle of it. And I think they will actually raise another issue of how much of the Levana must still be around when it's placed on the altar together with the comets. That's something that will be grappled with over here. And I think there's 3 different opinions on this specific point, this Nakuda, all of them based on varying, let's say, interpretations of the passage we mentioned in the book of Tzav, in Parshat Tzav over there, respectively, which is something that we have to point out. That's what is actually derived over here. It's actually a really, really good note over here. They derive it from over there. I think Rabbi Meir sees in the Torah's phrasing, he actually uses a phrase regarding all the Levana, which is on the mincha, an absolute need for all of the frankincense to remain when offered on the altar, the same quantity which it had when it was first placed in the mincha, a full kometz of incense. And Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Simon, Rabbi Shimon interpret the word kol over here in that passage not as the word all, like usually it is, but rather as any. That's a terminology indicating that even if most of the levana is not around, let's say the barest reminder is sufficient. They only disagree as to whether we read it into the word et, which we literally translate as, and a message to require more than the absolute minimum of 1 grain of levana. Now, I think Rabbi Yehuda is actually going to weigh in and see over here this terminology of the word et as adding 1 more grain to the minimum level of kol over here, and therefore requires, let's say, a remainder of 2 grains. Rabbi Shimon is going to maintain that even 1 grain is going to be enough. That's what we see at the end of yesterday's page in Daf Yud Aleph Amud Bet over here in Masechet Menachot. But many, many interesting insights into the page of the Gemara over here. Friends, over here, we're a community here. We're learning about the daily page of Daf Yomi every single day. I recommend everyone please subscribe to the channel as we've got fantastic content. We've been recording these videos since the start of Tractate Ketubot, which we have to point out over here, which is absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, we've recorded over 1,000 Daf Yomi videos and tidbits every single day. So today we were talking about the improper thoughts while preparing this meal offering. Naturally, meal offering is a mincha offering, and when talking about the science behind the kmitza, what it actually entails, and what mixtures can be done, what are the thoughts, what are the time and the place, and everything within regards to that. So please, everyone, subscribe to the channel. We also do tours all over Israel here on this channel. We tour around, we record with an inspirational rabbi every single day. We record videos on the weekly Torah portion, and much more. So very, very interesting. Wish you all a great day, and please join. Thanks very much for watching.